first thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Do. Second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Next, Mr. Chairman, you're not getting an agenda out, but the original thing was to get the DHS people to come talk about the questions from the last meeting and explain to it. One other thing I wanted to do was have Mr. Baird here to answer questions about Medicaid and budget going forward, because as you can tell through our increases over the last few years, most of our increases has been in Medicaid. So, Mr. Baird, do you have any, you want to talk about the budget the next 2 years, anything like that?
Just to kind of follow up on what you said, when you do look at the general revenue budget, you know, we have dozens of agencies that are funded out of that. Medicaid, if you go back the last few years, that traditionally does make up most of the growth in the funding required from the general revenue perspective. So that's just kind of a follow-up to what you just said. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions you'll have. I think you all have the same handouts. I guess everybody has the same handout.
Yeah. A couple questions I have is, my understanding is that you're spending one-time money to keep Medicaid going. Is that correct? You did last year and you did it this next year?
Yes, sir. So if you remember back, at least 2 bienniums, I believe it was the 11 to 13, it was 2 bienniums ago, there was $140 million of one-time funds allocated over the biennium. It was around $70 million each year. In the last biennium, it was $90 million total allocated, and in the next biennium, we propose continuing that $90 million level. And so we have allocated, you don't see it on the general revenue schedule, but when you look at our balanced budget, we attach a separate page that had the general improvement distribution, and it did have that $90 million on there.
So, I mean, it's pretty safe to say, I mean, I said years ago, we're using one-time money for ongoing operations.
So really, since we came out of recession as a state, we've been using one-time funds on an ongoing basis to basically support the general revenue budget. So yes, we do continue to use one-time funds. You know, we do it both with Medicaid and with academic facilities. We have another $100 million that we've allocated there, and that's going to be an ongoing obligation unless there are changes, either changes to that program or other revenue sources found for that program.
And the revenue sources that allow you to use these one-time funds, what funds those?
So primarily, it's surplus funds. So at the end of each fiscal year, the surplus accumulates in fund accounts, and then during the regular session, you all sweep that into a general improvement distribution. So what we've done is we've proposed to use those surplus funds. I believe it's around $178 million is the FY16 surplus. There are some fund balances that were reclaimed. This total is around $200 million. But of that, we've proposed a distribution of that, the largest part being both the facilities and the Medicaid.
Okay. So, but, I mean, the main thing is that it always leads any state. The trouble is when you use one-time funds for ongoing operations, you eventually run into trouble doing that. And that's what happened in 2010, 2011, but yet, you know, as a state or Governor Beebe or whoever lucked out because we got those stimulus funds that was able to drastically change whether we were going to have substantial losses. I mean, it's almost like, to me, it's the same thing on the farm or in the business. We're just using, that's just gambling. Eventually, you're going to come up with it wrong.
So it depends, you know, it really varies by state. In some states, they may have a general revenue surplus that flows over and is used as a beginning balance. And so if you think about this as a beginning balance that's less than 2% of the overall budget, then, you know, it's really more of a cash flow issue. But I think we would all agree that, you know, one-time funds by definition are one-time funds. And so, you know, when you fund programs with those, if you have no one-time funds in the future, you're going to have to replace those with ongoing revenue. So I do think that just as a general principle, we want to align our revenue streams with our actual expenditures over time.
And what's the first estimate on the cost that you have of paying for private option Medicaid expansion? It's 5%, right?
It is, and so the sheet you handed out, the small page, has those at the bottom, and I would say those are an accurate reflection of, just in round number terms, what we would consider the state match to be. And you know, as you know, I think, you know, DHS looks at the numbers, the Stephen Group looks at the numbers. There's really numbers on that going back to probably late 2012 or 2013. And so those are the numbers, those percentages are based on the calendar year. And then those general revenue numbers are fiscal year numbers. And so like for fiscal year 18, we have half year at 5%, half at 6%, so it's really a blended rate in between those two numbers.
And your estimate on that total, the blended numbers is how much this next year?
So in FY17, it's at 0 right now, it goes to 5%, so it's about 2.5%. And then in FY18, I'd say around 5.5%, because you're between 5 and 6. And I would, you know, defer to DHS if they have anything they want to add on any of these numbers, because a lot of times, you know, the budget office, we're looking very broadly, and I know that they're looking at these in more detail, so they may have something to add to something.
Now, on this, the premium tax, it's part of the portion that's collected of these people on the exchange that's sent into this fund to help pay for this. How much is your office allocating this year and next year and the next year to be paid out of that to help offset the cost?
So I would have to look to get the updated numbers for this year, but I believe that for FY17, we had assumed that the state match would be around that $41 million number. In looking at the premium tax collections, because they did start in, I think it was calendar year 14, we've accumulated for 3 years, 14, 15, 16, and then we're going to have the ongoing revenue generated. So if I remember correctly, in FY17, the assumption was that fund balance would be sufficient or close to sufficient to cover the match. You know, it could be a little bit lower, it could be a little bit higher. In FY18, we're looking at the ongoing revenues that are generated from the premium tax. And just in round numbers, I think the estimate is somewhere around $22 to $25 million on an ongoing basis in premium tax collections.